everybody, welcome to the Park Flyer Podcast. I'm Michael from Arizona. With me always are my good friends.
Jay from the hills of Texas.
And AK Mike in Texas.
And we are glad to have Mike back. Last episode, he was off doing some other stuff. I think you were traveling. Your daughter got married, I think, right?
Yes.
Very good.
She did.
Congratulations.
Very exciting. Yep.
Good. So you took a trip, I think, to Alaska.
That's correct. It was probably one of the best weeks in Alaska I've had. I mean, like
Ever?
the weather was. I mean, like the weather was just like tremendous. It couldn't have been any better. It started raining the day we were leaving. Perfect.
Oh,
you know?
Well, there you go. Perfect.
We don't need this rain. We're gonna leave.
That's it. And you brought it to me because it's been raining cats and dogs here in Arizona.
Yeah.
So
we've had a little bit of flooding ourselves.
Yeah, it's been crazy. Texas. Yeah. It's been quite. We call this monsoon season, and it's quite the monsoons. We've been raining. As a matter of fact, the last couple of days, it's just been torrential rains. So I had to go work on my tractor and drag the road so we could drive up and down the roads because I live on a dirt road. So it kind of washed out some of the, the road. But anyway, some days are beautiful and some days are not so beautiful. But the topic tonight, so to speak, is CA to the rescue. I went out and flew my 3D AeroVenture Infinity Wing Mini, and I had such a good time with you that I flew it that I took it out to the club to kind of do my own thing. And I told Jay, "Hey, I'm going out there to fly it." And I think Jay, you were getting geared up with such a good report that you were going to go out and do the same thing, right?
Yeah, my battery showed up.
Gym.
My battery showed up finally, and I charged him up and changed the
leads.
It's
not a 2200 milliamp battery?
Not even close.
It's 1,000.
Oh, come on, Eric. I mean, come on.
It's a 1,000 milliamp battery. Actually, if you get the bigger one, it may be a 2200.
I probably have to buy the bigger one.
Yes, the bigger one takes a 22.
So.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
You're back in my good graces.
Yeah. Anyway. So, yeah, you went out with Jim.
Yeah, I went out with Jim, and I got to maiden my plane as well. So it was very exciting.
Yeah. So anyway, the maidens went really well, and then we decided to fly them again. So I took mine to the club, and needless to say, if you're watching our YouTube channel at parkflyerpodcastyoutube.com, you will see that my Infinity Wing is now in pieces. Because
I thought that was just like pre-assembly. You're saying that's not really. Oh
no,
okay.
It was assembled before when you and I flew it, but now it is disassembled. And this would have been. It was kind of really crazy. Matter of fact, there was a couple guys out there, and I went to go fly it, and it's the first time I've flown it at the field, and. You and I flew it. I let you toss it, and you did a really good job there. And I flew it around a couple, once or twice. I got my new batteries. We talked about it on the last episode that it was getting ready to go. We had a really good maiden there, and I was all excited about flying this with the new batteries. I charged them up, went out there. Right as I was going to toss it, I launched it with my flying hand, which is something I normally don't do. Normally I'd launch airplanes with my throttle hand, not my control aileron and rudder hand. And for some reason, I don't know why, this particular day, I actually had it. I was carrying it around there, and I always have my thumb on the throttle. What I should have done is swapped and had, the throttle, because normally I'll move the throttle with my lip, kind of put it at a little half throttle and then toss it with this one so I can control the elevator and rudder. I mean, the elevator and aileron. But in this particular time, I just put the throttle on and then just launched it with my right hand because I'm right-handed.
Now,
anyway, the tail section.
Why were you throwing it? You had guys at the field, right?
There was guys, it was one of those just weird things. I was standing there talking to everybody. They haven't seen me in a while. Everybody was kind of discussing stuff. They were really intrigued with the airplane. So I was answering all these questions, and they were getting their airplanes put together, but they had all stopped putting their airplanes together so that they could talk to me about this Infinity Wing. And I was like, oh, well, I'll just go fly it right now since you guys are, all standing around. And so I turned around and started walking up to the field, and I go, someone want to launch it for me? And I just kind of said it in passing. But at that time, I had my back to everybody because I was walking to the flight line, and everybody had gone back to just putting and reassembling their airplanes, getting ready to go fly. So as I got up to the flight line, I turned back around and nobody was behind me. I thought somebody would have followed me out there, but they were all busy with their heads down in their own airplanes, putting their wings on and their landing gear down, all that kind of stuff. Cause there were 2 or 3 turbine jets that were about to go fly too. And so I was like, oh, well, they're all busy. Right. So I just figured, it's no big deal. Mike launched it last time and it launched really well. So I was just like, all right, I'll go to half throttle and I'll just throw it out there. And I don't know what I did, but as I extended my arm and I kind of tossed it above my head, kind of like not a baseball, but just kind of like throwing it. And when I did, the tail of that thing hit my wrist right as I let it go. It hit my wrist. And when it did, for some reason, the airplane just pitched right up. And I hammered at the throttle. It went up. It hung there for a second. And then it flipped over on its back at full throttle. And so I jerked the throttle off, and now it started coming down, and I got it between the fences, and it pancaked on the ground. So it didn't hit nose, like didn't just nose into the ground. It actually pancaked on the wheel and wings level because I got it back. But it hit hard enough that it busted the tail and it broke the motor mount off of the airplane. And so everybody heard it.
The test of physics.
Yeah. So it was one of those things. I didn't really quite know what to do because, this goes back to what Eric was talking about. If you ever got it slow and nose up, that it's going to spin into the ground. And I was really nervous about that. So I tried to shove the nose over. I tried to get it to launch. There's just enough power now this is where things kind of are crappy for me because if I would have had the 4-cell in there and I hammered the throttle, it would have just gone skyward. I would not have had to worry about it. There was so much power. Now I would have burned it up, I think. Burned up the ESC and the motor.
So it would have been a nice smoking thing, and it would have
been a smoker. But in this particular case, it just had enough in that 1000 milliamp that when I hammered it, it started to go up, but it just didn't have enough to get it vertical, like to go vertical without any forward speed. And so it just kind of ran out as it, climbed up about 10 feet or so. But with it being that high and then coming down, it could have just hit the fence, and I maneuvered it enough to get it to I just didn't have enough to pull it out of the bottom, and it just kind of pancaked on the ground. So anyway, I busted the motor mount. There was a couple of parts of the wing that came loose. The amazing thing to me is that it came loose on all of the joints. Yeah. So I came home and I got me some medium CA, and I just ran a bead around all those, and I started piecing it all back together. And so most of it, it's pretty amazing. You can kind of see if you're on their YouTube channel, you can see it, but there's a little white mark right here where I put some CA or some accelerator on there. And then this section down here came off, and I, kind of where it turns up at the very end, and I glued all that back together too. So I'm really impressed with, the fact that I was telling Jay after it happened, I was like, what's amazing about the way this thing layers itself is that when it broke, when I put it back together, it matched perfectly. Like there was no, it's just a seam because it's the way it lays it down, right? It goes over top of each other, so it creates this little rhythm. And when I glued it together, it was just that little piece. I just put it in there, and it fit perfectly. So there was no gap. There was it didn't even look like it was broke at that point. Unlike foam, right? If you hit foam tears, and then when you're stuffing the foam back in there, you don't have the perfect fit. I mean, it'll fit, but then you're kind of like smushing it together. But this actually, it just kind of pieced together, and I was like, I just ran a bead of CA, sprayed a little spritz, and then just held it, and it's kind of back. Now the downside to it is I did break the motor mount. So if you can see right here, for those of you on the YouTube channel, you can see it. But if you're listening to us, the motor mount pieces kind of broke off, and then there's a section on the tail that actually broke that I'm going to have to fill in. And Jay suggested I use like a little dab of
5-minute epoxy.
Epoxy or something to just kind of on there. So the tail is a little bit, you can kind of see it moving right there. But I mean, I glued it back together. The CA held it, and even on the bottom, you can't really tell other than where it kind of cracked. But I need the new front piece. And so I had to basically send Eric a picture. I told him, I was like, dude, I am sick to my stomach that this thing did that. Cause it was literally the very first flight of the day. I was the first one up to the line and it just ran out of my hands. And, when I hit myself with it, I was just like, this is so stupid. I should have just waited and had somebody else launch it. It would have been fine. But so now I'm soliciting Jay to print me out some new stuff. And I've got Eric kind of looking at his box to see if he's got a new fuselage for me. But so anyway, I came home to to tell Jay about it and hear his story, which sounds very typical of my story.
Well, it was kind of funny how that worked out because yours happened, like a day or two before, right? So you told me that and I printed your stuff out and then I was going out to go fly. So I was a little nervous, because I'm just like, okay, I'm remembering everything that Eric told us about flying the plane. Right. The biggest thing for me was just trying to get the weight and balance, just to get the CG right, because I'm reading the notes of what I have to do. I'm checking it out, but still the plane, because of that but because of the shape of the wing and where you have to measure it, I got out my CG balancer and stuff and I'm checking it out. I get it to balance and then all of a sudden it goes forward, and I'm like, okay, but it, kind of goes like it was nose heavy. I'm like, okay. I put it back again just to double check it. And this time it goes the other way. And all of a sudden, boom, the tail falls like it's tail heavy. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. I haven't moved anything. So then I started moving the battery around and you know how you just start thinking about things and playing with things. And, I was just kind of weirding myself out. So finally I get the battery in there and I get it in a position and I'm like, okay, I think that's balanced. And so, but I still wasn't 100% sure. Got out to the field with Jim. It was pretty nice in the morning. So I get, finally got up the courage to fly it. Jim gets out there to throw it and we're talking about throwing it and stuff. And Jim does this beautiful throw and the plane goes off and I'm flying, and I'm flying. Well, first we threw it over the grass, the high grass out at the field, right? So we throw it over the high grass and I, get it going and I get it up about 3 mistakes high and I'm kind of sorting out the trimming and everything. And it's trimming real easy. And then it just kind of gets in a groove and it's just flying really nice. And just then the wind started to kick up just a little bit. And I'm turning into the wind and the wind gusts. And all of a sudden the nose of the plane just kind of goes, whoa. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. That wasn't cool. The nose just picked up like that. That it shouldn't have been doing, because the plane was traveling at a good rate of speed. Yeah. And I go, you know what? There's a reason why, when Eric put the plane together, he put the tape, the Velcro where he put it.
Right.
And I went, he probably put it there for a reason because he's put together 1,000 of these things. He knows where the Velcro goes and where the battery should be in the plane. And mine was further back than, where the Velcro was in the sense. And I went, you know what? This plane may be tail heavy. It's flying okay, but it may be tail heavy. I'm going to go ahead and land. And so I kind of set the plane up, got it into a good profile. It just kind of came on in, landed like glass on the ground. On mine, I have the folding propellers and that just worked out beautiful. The plane, it landed great. And Jim's like, wow, that was fantastic. That plane looks really cool in the air. And I go, yeah, I'm going to move the battery up. Because he was like, why'd you land so soon? Was there a problem? And I go, yeah, I think the plane's tail heavy. I'm going to move the battery up. And so I went ahead and moved the battery up. And now I'm feeling confident because the launch was so smooth, was effortless, wasn't a problem. And I'm like, okay, with the battery forward, if it was flying a little tail heavy, with the battery forward, it should fly even better. I shouldn't have a problem. We get out there and Jim goes, well, you want to get over the grass? And I go, no. After that, being worried, the plane flew off so good. I'm not worried about, hitting the grass or being over the high grass.
Right.
And Jim said something. He said, "Remember the Franken-10?" And I was like, "What?" And and I said, "Well, let me go ahead and launch it anyway." And and he said, "Yeah, remember the Franken-10?" And he went to toss it, and the plane did almost like your story. He went to throw it. It went straight up. I don't know if it hit his hand or didn't get out of his hand right. And I'm kidding about the Franken-10 because if you remember from my other stories, I've crashed that plane like 8 times.
A ton of times. Right.
So, so anyway, the plane left his hand, went straight up like you just said. You know, it was already at full throttle. Got up there, started the stall, flipped over on its back. I cut the throttle. I got it to come out. You know, it came out of the dive, and it pancaked on the ground and just broke apart. Mine is sitting. You just see the little bit of the yellow there sitting on the ground over there.
Right. Yep.
So similar type of brakes in the sense. I don't think I'm gonna attempt to glue it all together. I may not have to print out any parts. I didn't get any damage like you did in the nose cone section and the motor mount. It was more brakes along the wing and on the fuselage. So I'll see just how bad that is. But I think I can I'm going to go ahead and try to attempt to piece it all together and glue it together. So, but it was really, for the moment, for that one flight that I flew it, man, it looked so good in the air. It sounded great. It looked great. So I don't know what happened, why it did, Jim threw, it wasn't like he did like a super crazy throw or anything. He did a similar throw to the last time. He had it more, 45 degrees, and it just, I don't know if he threw it or he just caught it, he had it too far back and it went up. I don't know what happened.
Right.
But it did very similar to what you said. So I think pretty much as Eric has in his guide, his PDF file, you just have to do a gentle throw, level 10, 20 maybe degrees, if that, and just do a straight ahead throw, and that's it. No, not trying to put any power behind
no nose
it.
up,
Well, like if you throw like a little small EDF, you're trying to hook it to get some, to get some speed up and air over the wings, where this thing really doesn't, it produces a lot of power. It just needs a nice gentle throw to kind of get it on track, and, it'll do the rest. The big thing that I was worried about was that I didn't have it, like when you're flying wings and you want to have a little, not dehedral, what do you call that when you have reflex? You want to have a little reflex in the elevators or something. I was wondering if I might need that. Even though Eric didn't really put anything in the notes about, having to have, 2 degrees of reflex or any of that kind of crap. I was worried about that. I was worried it was going to, kind of head for the ground when you first threw it, but I didn't have that problem. But yeah, it was disappointing because I was just, at least you got several flights out of yours, so maybe one more flight than I did, but it was a little disappointing. And the second thing is, and I guess this is the weakness of these 3D printed planes. If that plane had been a foamy, it would have survived. You know what I mean? It wouldn't have.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, it wasn't like this didn't survive. It survived. It's not.
No, it did. But
if this would have been a balsa airplane, it would have been in multiple pieces.
Oh, yeah. I guess that is true.
Or a fiberglass airplane, this thing would have just shattered, and then the repairs would have been much worse than just using CA to kind of put the pieces back together. Right. But, the other thing is this is modular, so you can print out just one piece, if
that was the
I
part
need the motor mount,
that's
so
true.
you just,
Yeah, first when you showed the pictures,
buy a whole fuselage.
When you first showed your damaged pictures and stuff, I just thought it was just the worst part that was shattered was the cowling and was your motor mount, because it looked like your motor mount, that the firewall was perfect. You couldn't tell it from the pictures, and you didn't say anything. So at first I thought, wow, that's great. It was just those two pieces. It took me an hour, printed those parts out, and had them in the box ready to send to you, and you're like, oh no, the firewall broke, and that first section of fuselage is whatever.
Exactly. One of the wing mounts broke,
So,
but the difference is too, though, is that I was on asphalt and you were on grass, and I think that.
Well, I was in the center of my flying field, and it is dry as all get out.
Yeah.
So it was the equivalent of concrete.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
You
maybe
know,
that's
out
why.
there.
You think if
So-
you would have been over the tall grass, it would have been different?
It would have helped, but
Yeah.
you know, who can say? Who can say? Really?
Right.
I mean,
right.
it would have helped. The tall grass would have helped, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, I probably would have still done some damage.
Yeah.
Now, here's some interesting things that I did find out from another. I think I sent you guys the pictures of this guy who is developing a new EDF. His name's Rene Rosentrager, and he's
Mhm.
developing this new SUXO
Mm-hmm.
aircraft EDF, and it's a lightweight PLA EDF. And this guy is serious when he's talking lightweight. I mean, he's designed this thing to minimize weight wherever he could. I mean, like he designed like his landing gear for the plane, and it's all out of carbon fiber rods, this, that, the other
Wow.
thing, you know, and you know, so he's saving grams wherever he can. Now, he for building his plane, he stumbled across this technique, and it's kind of unique to this 3D printing, which is kind of cool. Like I said, this 3D print stuff, it's using this foaming plastic. All right. So it's not like, when you normally have the plastic, it's like a layer line, then another layer line melts and attaches to the first layer line and goes over and so on and so forth. Right. Well, with this one, depending on the temperature, it foams. So instead of the layer line being, 0.000, it foams. And so now it foams due to the temperature from 0.000 to 0.3000, in height, as depending on whatever temperature you want or more. So it creates this like sponge, think of it like a sponge, it's kind of puffing up like that. Or it has that structure as opposed to a solid line,
Right.
or plastic. So the cool part about this is you so you have your wing or your fuselage body. And if you were to take sandpaper, sand it. So think about a sponge, right? It may be solid on the top, but if you just sliced off a thin piece of the top and peeled it back, well, now there's all holes and stuff in there, right? So, like normally, if you were just to pour epoxy on top of something that was printed with, this plastic, it would just kind of sit on the plastic. It wouldn't give you much strength. There would be the little layer lines, and it might fill in the layer lines, but that wouldn't give you much strength. It would just add weight. It would be hard, or you can sand it smooth, but it really isn't giving you functional strength. Well, with this lightweight PLA, as this guy Rene kind of discovered, once you sand off the top, and now it's become all porous, and now you pour epoxy on it. Well, now the properties of where epoxy and like fiberglass, why you get the strength from it, is because the epoxy can get amongst the weaves of the fiberglass or the carbon fiber, and that's where it's getting its strength. Well, now that you've opened up the pores of the plastic, and now the epoxy gets in there and fills in between the stuff, and now you get really good strength. And this guy has in his video, he has a tail section, or he has a wing or whatever, one that he's sanded, put epoxy on, sanded again, and then he's putting like lead shot on it, and he's pouring lead shot on it, and he's showing the difference between the two. And it's pretty remarkable how much the epoxied lightweight plastic is compared to the other piece that didn't have epoxy on it. It's quite substantial. So I'm thinking here for either repairs or for fixing this thing, I may be trying a couple of those techniques. So we'll have to see next time we get on, how that works out. But it's pretty remarkable. And I'll leave a link to, where that guy's doing, his planes are pretty cool too. He's, like I said, he's making this lightweight EDF that's pretty cool looking design. And he's making a Sea Harrier with vectored thrust, with not vectored thrust, vertical, VTOL.
He's making a VTOL
out of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But all lightweight, all within, which is just really cool with this whole 3D thing. It's just amazing that he's able to design all this stuff. Anyway.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Very cool.
That is very cool. That's you'll have to tell us how that works out. So CA worked for me. I got most of it, other than the fact that I need a new front end piece, but that's about it. So,
well, I'm thinking,
but I may try that technique on the tail.
Yeah, I'm thinking for the now. Eric also told us that you can use used dryer sheets and CA
some,
for fixing certain things on the air. Well, not just these planes, but also for your foamies as well. You know, and I had a little dent, and I tried it on that, and it seems to work. It's pretty cool. But I'm thinking between the two, techniques, or at least for these planes in the future, being that, you have breaks along certain layer lines or whatever, it seems to me that you'd be able to reinforce certain parts of the aircraft using those techniques,
right?
To help reinforce them. Now, the guy, like for the tail section that he was working on, the guy weighed the pieces before and after, and with the epoxy and the sanding and everything, it only added 2 grams to that 2 or 3 grams to that to that tail section, and really that's not a whole lot. When you're
not in the overall scheme of things, 2 grams.
Yeah. So if it gives that much strength and it's only penalty of just a couple of grams, I think it's well worth it. And then, like I said, you don't have to do the whole entire plane. You can just do
key points. Yeah.
Yeah. Either where you join since this thing likes to pop apart, where you join it, every time you join a section, and that's where you seem to have breaks, you might want to strengthen it right where you have the joints, where all the joints are.
Right.
So now all we have to do is get Mr. Barslew, some plastic so he can print something out and he can be enjoying. He can be having tails.
Maybe.
Whoa.
Yeah. Why would I have a tail of whoa?
Well,
I don't feel like there's any faith right there, Jay. I mean, it might be deserved, but I still don't feel like there's any faith.
Well, misery loves company, so that's all I'm saying.
I mean, I did crash Mike's L29. I mean,
L39 sitting right there.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I crashed. I'd say I didn't land it well.
That's a nice way to put it.
Yeah.
You landed a little high. You landed a little slow and high.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, you can't see it, but the landing gear is sitting right there too. It totally ripped the landing gear clean out of there. I mean, it literally chopped the wire and everything. So it's just the landing gear. So I got to replace that.
I didn't want it to limp along. I want it to be clean.
Clean. Yep.
Clean.
You were clean at that. So
I did it.
Can't go wrong with that.
Success.
So yeah. Anyway, I gotta get on that. I've got some time coming off from work, and I'll jump on that and get it back in the air here shortly. So I've been working on my turbine and doing some other stuff along with work. So I just got to get a break. But anyway, let's see. You guys flying at all this week, or?
It's been raining here.
Yeah, it's been raining here too, but
pretty
we were going to
solid.
try and go fly, but it just when those monsoons kick up, man, the wind goes from 0 to hero, dude. It's literally dead, and then it's just like this 200 mile an hour wind. Just whoa, where did that come from? So you don't want to be in the air with any airplane, including Barry's expensive turbines, when that happens. He's lost one.
Well,
because
I feel like you could probably do it with your Delta wing, your tough wing, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. If it was a Delta wing, you could probably do it. It would be. Actually, you know what? Jay and I flew a few years ago. Remember in the park we had the Phoenix 2000.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And they had a big monsoon that came in, and Jay's like, "Hey man, I think this will fly." And we tossed it, and that airplane sat in a perfect still condition. Never went. We couldn't get it to go forward, and we had just enough power to keep it from moving backwards. But it just sat there in the park. And we were laughing. Oh my gosh, we could not stop laughing because this airplane is just hanging there. It never moved. And we were flying it left and right, and up and down, and it just stayed in exactly the same part until the wind quit, and then it wanted to fly again. But it was pretty funny. It was a good time. And
we've flown our tough wings in Alaska under high winds. We went to the place expecting to be reasonable, and the wind was just blowing. It's like, yeah, let's try to have a dogfight anyway.
Nope, just give it a try.
Yeah, I mean,
Hey,
what's the worst could happen?
Yeah, no doubt. So, well, unfortunately, our time is up for this week. We have kind of reached our time limit, but we'll talk more about some of these techniques Jay's talking about, and about the guy that is doing some new work. Other than that, I'm Michael from Arizona.
I'm Jay from the hills of Texas.
And I'm AK Mike in Texas.
We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Let's fly.